Hollywood built empires on beauty, talent, and illusion. But for decades, one truth was considered too dangerous to let breathe: love that didn't fit the script. While cameras rolled and audiences cheered, some of cinema's brightest names lived double lives, not by choice, but by survival. They weren't only acting on screen, they were acting every second of every day, hiding who they loved, who they were, sometimes even from themselves. Some were blacklisted, others were broken. A few resisted, most simply disappeared. Their stories buried beneath press releases, studio power, and carefully manufactured lies. Tonight, the silence ends. These are the performers Hollywood exiled, erased, or exploited. Not because they lacked talent, but because they dared to love authentically in an industry built on acceptable fiction. If Hollywood's hidden history matters to you, subscribe now, because remembering these names is how we make sure they're never erased twice. Drop the number of any story that moves you in the comments below. 1. William Haynes, the star who chose love over empire. In 1930, William Haynes stood at the peak of Hollywood power. MGM's highest paid male actor, he commanded the screen with sharp wit, charm, and effortless charisma. Audiences adored him. Studios fought for him. His future looked limitless until the most powerful man in Hollywood, Louis B. Mayer, summoned him for an ultimatum: end your relationship with Jimmy Shields and marry a woman for publicity, or lose everything. Haynes didn't pause. He said, "I am already married, not legally, but spiritually." That single sentence ended his career overnight. MGM shredded his contract. Other studios, terrified of Mayer's influence, refused to hire him. Under the Hays Code, anything labeled sexual perversion was forbidden, and openly gay actors were seen as a threat to Hollywood's carefully curated morality. Haynes vanished from the screen as if he'd never existed. But he didn't collapse. He reinvented himself as an interior designer with Jimmy at his side. Together, they built a second empire, designing for the same Hollywood elites who had abandoned him professionally. Joan Crawford called them the happiest couple she knew. Behind closed doors, deeply closeted stars sought their friendship, their advice, their sanctuary. They stayed together for more than 50 years, dying months apart. No legal recognition, no wedding. No apology for a choice that cost him stardom. Just a love that outlasted blacklisting, stigma, and everything Hollywood threw their way. Haynes proved something radical: that authenticity could be worth more than fame, that love could matter more than legacy. His exile wasn't a failure. It was one of early Hollywood's most quietly powerful rebellions. Tommy Kirk, Disney's golden boy, discarded like trash. At 15, Tommy Kirk became the face of America's ideal childhood. Disney built an empire around his clean-cut charm: Old Yeller, Swiss Family Robinson, the Shaggy Dog. He embodied everything Walt Disney prized in his fantasy of innocence. By 21, it was over. Not faded, not retired, expelled. The reason was brutal in its simplicity. He had fallen in love with another teenage boy. When the boy's mother discovered the relationship, she went straight to Disney executives. Walt Disney made the decision himself. Tommy Kirk would never work for the company again. No explanation, no conversation, just permanent exile. Kirk spiraled. Pills became a coping mechanism. His career shrank to low-budget exploitation films, roles that felt more like punishment than opportunity. When he came out publicly in the 1970s, mainstream Hollywood sealed the door shut. He eventually ran a small carpet cleaning business, living in near total obscurity compared to his childhood superstardom. "I had no idea I was gay until my late teens," he said years later. "When I found out, it scared me to death. It literally ruined my career." But this wasn't a single tragedy. It was a system protecting its myth. Disney sacrificed a real young man to preserve a fantasy, a reminder that wholesome images often require erasing the humans behind them. Tommy Kirk's story is the price tag of that magic. Patsy Kelly, the comedian who refused to hide. Patsy Kelly made people laugh. Loud, honest, explosive laughter. In 1930s Hollywood comedies, she was the wisecracking sidekick with razor-sharp timing and fearless delivery. But behind the punchlines lived a truth her era wasn't ready for. She was proudly, openly gay. In a town where most queer stars survived through silence, Kelly shrugged. She joked in interviews about living with her girlfriend Wilma. She quipped about not needing men. Her openness wasn't just bold, it was revolutionary and professionally dangerous. Hollywood punished her methodically. After her comedy partner Thelma Todd's mysterious death, Kelly's career collapsed. Offers evaporated, studio doors closed quietly, one by one. She was pushed to Poverty Row Productions, relegated to forgotten B-movies, while straighter, quieter actresses claimed roles she had earned through sheer talent. To survive, she worked as a personal assistant for closeted actresses, women who depended on her to maintain the very lies she refused to tell about herself. She drank. She argued. She refused to beg, to pretend, to trade honesty for comfort. For decades, she disappeared from screens entirely until a 1970s comeback finally reminded audiences just how extraordinary she'd always been. But what she regained was never equal to what she'd lost. Not the stardom, not the stability, not the recognition her skill deserved. Kelly's punishment wasn't about ability, it was about honesty. She was a threat to Hollywood's prettiest illusion, proof that women could live joyfully, successfully, without needing men at all. That truth cost her everything, except her integrity. 4. Tab Hunter, America's boyfriend who couldn't breathe. He was the dream made flesh, blonde, sun-kissed, all-American perfection. In the 1950s, Tab Hunter was everywhere. Magazine covers, silver screen blockbusters, hit records. Battle Cry, Damn Yankees. Teenage girls sobbed over him. Studio executives prayed someone would clone him. He was the ideal, the boy next door packaged for mass consumption. But the ideal had a secret that was suffocating him. Tab Hunter was gay. At 23, that truth nearly destroyed everything when a tabloid threatened to expose his arrest at a private all-male party. Warner Brothers scrambled into crisis mode, staging dates with Natalie Wood, Debbie Reynolds, anyone who could reinforce the heterosexual fantasy. Hunter smiled for cameras, flirted on cue, performed the perfect heartthrob, but inside, he was splitting himself into pieces. His real relationship with actor Anthony Perkins lived only in shadows. No public outings, no hand-holding, no safety. Every interview was a script. Every public moment was fiction. The weight became unbearable. He eventually bought out his contract just to escape the machine grinding him down. Reinvention followed, this time in John Waters' pulp films like Polyester, where he played campy versions of the man he once pretended to be. But now the joke belonged to him. Yet the peak had passed. Not because his talent faded, but because authenticity and stardom couldn't coexist in his era. Hunter later came out publicly, revealing a lifetime of secret relationships and silent fear. The price of being America's boyfriend, when America would have destroyed him for being himself. 5. Sal Mineo, murdered twice, once by Hollywood, once by a stranger. Sal Mineo played Plato in Rebel Without a Cause, the lonely boy with haunted eyes, silently in love with James Dean's character. For a moment, Mineo represented something revolutionary, tender masculinity without apology. But life didn't imitate art, it surpassed it in cruelty. Off-screen, he was introspective, gentle, and increasingly unable to hide his bisexuality. Unlike other stars who mastered concealment, Mineo's queerness flickered through every soft glance, every careful line delivery. Directors whispered, "Too sensitive, too complicated." After his breakout success, roles vanished. He no longer fit the teenage mold, but Hollywood refused to let him grow into anything else. The industry had no space for the actor he was becoming. In 1972, he publicly acknowledged his sexuality. It should have been liberation. Instead, it cemented his exile. Guest TV spots and small theater roles became his ceiling. Then came February 12, 1976. Walking toward his apartment after rehearsal, Mineo was stabbed once in the heart by a mugger. He died in the hallway at 37. The media pounced, not with sympathy, but speculation. Rumors of gay love triangles, whispers that he'd courted danger. The truth was simpler and more devastating: a random robbery. But the damage was done. Even in death, Mineo couldn't escape being reduced to scandal instead of remembered as a gifted artist taken too soon. Hollywood made him vulnerable by denying him belonging, then blamed him for being a target. His story isn't just erasure. It's what happens when a system punishes authenticity, then points to the punishment as proof the authentic were always doomed. 6. Rock Hudson, the handsome lie America loved. Hollywood didn't just create stars, it created gods, and few were more worshipped than Rock Hudson. With his towering frame, soft smile, and impossibly smooth voice, he wasn't just America's favorite leading man, he became the nation's definition of masculinity, strength, charm, heterosexual perfection, or so the myth demanded. Behind the tuxedos and red carpets lived a truth even Hudson tried to bury. He was gay. For years, Hudson played his role flawlessly. He kissed actresses on screen, flirted on talk shows, charmed the public. And the acting never stopped. Not when filming ended, not at home, not even with friends. Because the cost of honesty wasn't just a dip in popularity, it was total destruction. Then came the cruelest twist. The truth emerged only when his body could no longer hide it. In 1985, Rock Hudson became the first major celebrity publicly identified as dying of AIDS. And for the first time, the myth shattered. The jawline faded. The Hollywood god became heartbreakingly human, vulnerable, sick, still trying to protect everyone but himself. His death forced America to confront AIDS, to talk, to see. But it also forced a question that will never have an answer. What would his life have looked like if he'd ever been allowed to live it openly? Hudson spent decades performing straightness so convincingly millions believed it, dying without ever knowing the freedom of simply being himself. 7. Raymond Burr, the man who invented a family to hide his real one. Raymond Burr built a career on exposing truth. As Perry Mason, he was the brilliant attorney who always revealed what others tried to hide. But off-screen, Burr wasn't solving mysteries. He was surviving inside one. Reporters constantly asked why he never married. Burr responded with heartbreakingly crafted stories. A wife lost in a plane crash, another to cancer, a son taken by leukemia. The details were so specific, so tragic, the press printed them without hesitation. None of it was real. Not the wives, not the child, nothing. Why build such elaborate fiction? Because Raymond Burr was in love with Robert Benavides, his partner of more than 30 years. They lived together, worked together, built a quiet, full life together, but could never acknowledge it beyond the label of friend. The tragedies Burr invented weren't vanity. They were armor. Explanations that protected him from a world not ready to accept the truth. Burr wasn't blacklisted. He kept his stardom, his wealth, his roles. But the price he paid was intimacy, the ability to honor the person that mattered most. He died in 1993, still protecting a love the world wasn't allowed to see. He never publicly confirmed what those around him quietly understood. Benavides inherited everything, yet never received the title the world recognizes. He was never allowed to call himself partner, only friend, only assistant, only anything that wasn't the truth. Burr's story raises uncomfortable questions. Is hidden love better than none at all? Should survival demand erasing the people we cherish most? His legacy is brilliant work built atop a foundation of necessary lies, a monument to both his extraordinary talent and the era's quiet cruelty. 8. Anthony Perkins, the man haunted by Norman Bates and himself. Anthony Perkins terrified audiences as Norman Bates, soft-spoken, boyish, carrying monstrosity beneath fragile innocence. But long after Psycho ended, Perkins never stopped performing a version of that role, hiding his real self behind carefully constructed masks. He was gentle, brilliant, almost painfully shy. His delicate masculinity made him mesmerizing on screen and unsettling to executives off it. He loved men, sharing a tender, anxious relationship with Tab Hunter, letters exchanged in secret, hotel rooms shared like contraband, every moment shadowed by fear of exposure. After Psycho, Perkins became trapped.